Have you ever wondered what would happen if Tony Stark was actually charged for all his crimes? Well, today we're gonna find out. Starting with Iron Man 2, Tony arrives in Monaco as a sponsor for one of the racing teams. But here's where things get stupid. His blood poisoning is at 53%, and instead of seeking medical help like a normal person, he decides the best course of action is to drive a race car himself at high speeds. Tony would be charged with reckless endangerment and public endangerment, giving him an immediate 5 years in prison and a $50,000 fine. Later in Iron Man 2, Tony's blood poisoning has skyrocketed to 89%, and instead of checking into the hospital, he throws a massive birthday party knowing it might be his last day alive. He starts pretending to be a DJ, getting absolutely wasted in the Iron Man suit, and literally demonstrates how he pisses standing up in front of everyone.
Just like that.
When Rhodey sees this disaster, he grabs another Iron Man suit and they proceed to have a full-blown armored fight, destroying walls, sinks, and basically the entire house. Property damage, public intoxication while operating dangerous machinery, and creating a public hazard. Tony would be looking at another 8 years and $75,000 in fines. And we're just getting started. In Avengers Endgame, Tony travels back to 1970 and infiltrates Camp Lehigh using a completely fake identity.
Howard.
He's impersonating military personnel on a secure military base. He proceeds to steal the Tesseract, which is classified military property, literally one of the most powerful objects in the universe, and a paperweight.
Some of the guys use them as paperweights.
For identity fraud, impersonating military personnel, infiltrating a military base, and theft of classified military property, Tony would be charged with 25 years in federal prison and a $500,000 fine. And considering what he stole, they'd probably add treason charges too. Yeah, that's a lot, and if you're still with me, it gets so much worse. Let's go back to where it all started in Iron Man 1. Tony arrives in Afghanistan and demonstrates the Jericho missiles in what's essentially a military weapons deal. These aren't small arms. These are weapons of mass destruction being sold to military forces. When those missiles end up in terrorist hands, Tony's company is directly responsible. While Tony himself might not have pulled the trigger, illegal arms dealing, contributing to international conflict, and negligent weapons distribution would give him 30 years in prison and $1 million in fines. But Tony really crosses the line after seeing footage of his weapons destroying a village. He doesn't call the authorities or work through proper channels. Instead, he smashes windows, puts on armor, takes the elevator, and flies there to fuck up the terrorists and a tank. Unauthorized military action on foreign soil, violation of international law, and acts of war without government authorization. Every country has sovereignty, and Tony just completely ignored that. He'd be charged with 40 years in prison and $2 million in fines, plus potential international war crimes tribunals. On Tony's way back from his unauthorized village-saving mission, 2 US fighter jets try to intercept him because, you know, there's an unidentified flying object in restricted airspace. Tony's response? He accidentally destroys one of them. That's a multi-million-dollar fighter jet, and he just breaks it like it's a toy. Destruction of US military property, endangering military personnel, and operating in restricted airspace would add another 20 years and $5 million in fines to cover that jet. Now we're getting into the really messed up stuff. In Civil War, Tony Stark recruits a 15-year-old Peter Parker and brings him into an international superhero battle. Spider-Man stole Captain America's shield, stops Bucky's metal arm, and at the end, barely survives, holding up at least a couple tones on his shoulders. This isn't a training exercise. This is a full combat situation with enhanced individuals throwing cars and buildings at each other. Tony doesn't inform Peter's legal guardian properly, doesn't provide adequate safety measures, and actively puts a minor in life-threatening danger. Child endangerment, reckless endangerment of a minor, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor would get him 25 years in prison and a $750,000 fine. In the first Avengers movie, when Loki arrives on Earth, he threatens the citizens, but when Thor shows up to handle his brother and teach him some manners, Tony, instead of talking it out, just straight up crashes into Thor at full speed, and they end up in a forest that gets completely annihilated during their fight. Trees destroyed, ecosystem ruined, environmental destruction, assault on an alien diplomat, and creating a forest fire hazard would add 15 years and $500,000 in fines. So far, Tony Macaroni has racked up 168 years on his charge sheet, with a huge set of fines worth $9,875,000. But trust me, this is nothing compared to what's coming up. These next set of crimes cement Tony as one of the most vile anti-heroes of all time. At the end of Civil War, Tony discovers that Bucky killed his parents while under mind control, so Tony tries to straight up murder Bucky using deadly weapons without any legal process or provocation. Bucky wasn't an active threat at that moment, and Tony just wanted revenge. This is attempted murder in the first degree, assault with a deadly weapon, and vigilante justice. Even with the emotional context, Tony would be looking at life in prison plus 20 years and a $1 million fine. Throughout Iron Man 2, the US government tries at all costs to prove that Tony's condom is a weapon and he should hand it over. They use his biggest competitor and Rhodey's betrayal to accomplish the goal, but Tony Macaroni is as always too cool and hacks the monitor, showing all the Chinese knockoffs including Hammer, then announces he's fucking awesome and heads toward the camera as if he wants to fuck it. Refusal to comply with federal weapons regulations, contempt of Congress, and possession of unregistered weapons of mass destruction would result in life in prison and $25 million in fines. Actually, you know what? We didn't even cover the time Tony created an artificial intelligence that tried to destroy humanity yet. In Avengers: The Age of Ultron, an AI robot becomes convinced that humanity is the planet's greatest threat and builds a robotic army to destroy it, lifting Sokovia into the sky to cause global extinction before the Avengers stop him and Vision destroys his final form. This is potentially the worst crime in human history, which Stark is a part of. Tony would be charged with crimes against humanity, reckless endangerment of the entire planet, unauthorized creation of weapons of mass destruction, mass murder, and attempted genocide. For this alone, Tony would receive 500 years in prison and a $100 billion penalty. So with everything in this video taken into account, Tony Macaroni would be a very fortunate person to escape these crimes with anything less than 828 years behind bars, and an astronomical amount of fines valued at $100,035,875,000.